Everything you have been told about self-improvement is a lie. Not because the advice is wrong, but because you were never designed to follow it. You have watched hundreds of videos. You have read the books. You have listened to the podcasts. You have bookmarked the articles. And here you are again, searching, consuming, hoping that this next piece of content will finally be the one that changes everything. It will not, because the problem is not the quality of the information. The problem is that your brain is running a program that was written 200,000 years ago in the African savanna, and that program was never meant to help you become disciplined or focused or successful. It was meant to keep you alive in an environment where novelty meant survival and stillness meant death. Let me tell you what is actually happening inside your skull right now. There is a structure deep in your brain called the nucleus accumbens. This is your dopamine factory. Every time you click on a new video, every time you open a new tab, every time you think you have found the answer, this factory floods your system with a chemical reward. Not for taking action, not for changing your life, for seeking, for searching, for the promise of a solution. Your biology does not care if you actually improve. It cares that you keep looking because in the ancient world, the organism that stopped exploring was the organism that starved or got eaten. So your brain rewards you for seeking and punishes you for stopping. This is why you feel good when you find a new strategy and terrible when you try to implement it. Implementation requires effort. Seeking requires a click. You are not lazy. You are not weak. You are not broken. You are a perfectly functioning biological machine that is optimized for an environment that no longer exists. In the savannah, information was scarce and action was abundant. You had to walk 10 miles to find food. You had to build shelter with your hands. You had to fight or run or hide. The dopamine hit from spotting a new fruit tree or finding a water source had to be strong enough to motivate that 10-mile walk. But in the modern world, information is infinite and action is optional. You can get the dopamine hit of discovery without ever leaving your chair. Your brain cannot tell the difference between finding actionable wisdom and finding another video promising actionable wisdom. Both trigger the same reward pathway. Both make you feel like you are making progress. But only one actually changes your life. And it is not the one that feels better. Here is the brutal truth that no content creator wants you to understand. The self-improvement industry is built on your biology working against you. Every video title, every thumbnail, every promise of transformation is engineered to trigger your novelty-seeking circuitry. We are not helping you. We are feeding the same addiction that keeps you stuck. The algorithm knows this. It knows that you will watch this video and then watch another one and then another one because watching feels like doing. Because your prefrontal cortex, the CEO of your brain, gets hijacked by the older, faster, stronger systems that scream at you to keep searching. And the worst part is that every time you consume without implementing, you are training your brain that this is how growth works. You are building a neural pathway that says information equals transformation. You are literally rewiring your hardware to confuse learning with changing. I know what you are thinking right now. You are thinking that this video is different, that I am going to give you the one piece of advice that finally breaks through. And part of you already knows that I am right about everything I just said, but another part of you, the part that is controlled by that dopamine circuit, is already planning what video you will watch next if this one disappoints you. That voice is not you. That is 200,000 years of evolutionary programming. That is your biological machinery doing exactly what it was designed to do. Keep you seeking, keep you hoping, keep you in motion without moving. So let me ask you a question that is going to feel uncomfortable. How many hours have you spent consuming content about discipline, productivity, focus, mental toughness? How many videos, podcasts, books, articles? Now ask yourself this. If you had spent even 10% of that time actually implementing one single strategy, where would you be right now? The answer is painful because it reveals the game you have been playing without knowing it. You have been using information consumption as a replacement for action. You have been using the feeling of learning as a substitute for the discomfort of change. And your brain loves this arrangement because seeking information feels productive without requiring the metabolic cost of actual work. It is the perfect scam. You get to feel like you are improving while staying exactly where you are. Let me show you how deep this goes. There is a concept in neuroscience called the Zeigarnik Effect. It is the tendency to remember uncompleted tasks better than completed ones. Your brain holds on to open loops. This is why you can remember the plot of a TV show you never finished, but forget the ending of one you watched all the way through. The self-improvement content cycle exploits this perfectly. Every video you watch opens a loop. Every book you start but do not finish. Every strategy you learn but do not implement. Your brain catalogs these as unfinished business, and the discomfort of that incompletion drives you to seek more. Not to close the loop by taking action, but to open another loop by consuming another piece of content. You are not building knowledge, you are accumulating cognitive debt, and just like financial debt, the interest compounds until the weight of all these open loops becomes so heavy that you cannot move at all. The real question is not why you keep consuming. The real question is why you never stop, and the answer is not about willpower or discipline. The answer is about your brain chemistry and the environment you have created for it. Every time you watch a video and do nothing with it, you are training your neural pathways to associate inspiration with inaction. Every time you feel motivated and then let that motivation fade without converting it into behavior, you are strengthening the connection between emotion and paralysis. Your brain learns that the feeling is the reward, that the surge of dopamine from a great idea is the endpoint, not the starting point. And once your brain learns this, it will resist action even harder because action does not come with the same neurochemical payoff that novelty does. Action comes with friction, discomfort, metabolic cost, and uncertainty. Novelty comes with a chemical reward and zero risk. This is why most self-improvement content is actually making you worse. It is training you to be a professional consumer of transformation instead of an active participant in it. And I am including this video in that category. Right now, as you listen to these words, your brain is doing something very specific. It is scanning for the useful part, the actionable insight, the thing you can extract and add to your mental library of strategies you will never use. And when you find it, you will feel that little dopamine bump. You will feel like this was worth your time, and then you will move on to the next video, and the cycle continues. Unless you do something different right now. Unless you interrupt the pattern your brain is running. Let me pause here for a second and ask you a question that maybe no one has ever asked you. What is the worst part of living with this internal struggle? Not what you tell people, but the part you carry in silence. I want you to know something. What you are feeling is more common than you imagine. Thousands of people are watching this video right now carrying exactly the same weight. If you have the courage, leave a comment telling me what is the hardest part for you. Your honesty might make someone else feel less alone today. Now let me continue showing you how to break this pattern. The solution is not another strategy. The solution is understanding that you are fighting biology with willpower, and that is a fight you cannot win. Willpower is a limited resource. It is a function of glucose availability in your prefrontal cortex, and it depletes throughout the day. Your dopamine-seeking circuits do not deplete. They run on autopilot. They do not get tired. They do not need motivation. They just execute the program. So if you try to white-knuckle your way out of this pattern, if you try to just force yourself to stop consuming and start doing, you will fail. Not because you are weak, but because you are using a tool that was never designed for this job. What you need is not more discipline. What you need is engineering. You need to redesign your environment so that the path of least resistance leads to action instead of consumption. Here is how you do it. First, you have to understand that your attention is not yours. It is being managed by algorithms that are optimized to keep you seeking, not finding. Every platform you use, every app you open, every website you visit has been engineered by teams of PhDs in behavioral psychology who understand your dopamine circuitry better than you do. They know exactly how to keep you scrolling. They know exactly how to make you feel like you are learning while ensuring you never leave. So the first step is to cut the supply line. And this is not about deleting apps or going on a digital detox. Those strategies fail because they rely on willpower. What you need is friction. Massive, annoying, unavoidable friction between you and the content consumption loop. Take every app that delivers self-improvement content and log out of it. Delete your passwords from your browser. Enable two-factor authentication. Make it so that accessing that dopamine hit requires 5 separate annoying steps. Your brain will not do 5 annoying steps for a dopamine hit when it can get the same hit from checking your email or scrolling through literally anything else. You are not trying to stop the seeking behavior entirely. You are trying to redirect it towards something that actually builds your life. The goal is to make content consumption so annoying that taking action becomes the easier option. Second, you need to weaponize the Zeigarnik Effect instead of being its victim. Right now, you have dozens of open loops in your head, strategies you learned, books you started, goals you set. Each one is generating low-level anxiety, and that anxiety is driving you back to seeking as a form of relief. Close the loops, but not by consuming more, by doing less. Pick one thing, one single strategy that you learned from all those hours of content consumption. Write it down on a piece of paper. Put that paper somewhere you will see it every single day. And for the next 30 days, your only job is to implement that one thing, nothing else. You do not get to learn anything new. You do not get to watch another video about productivity or discipline or mindset. You implement the thing you already know until it becomes automatic, until your brain stops fighting it, until the neural pathway is so strong that doing it requires less energy than not doing it. This is going to feel terrible. Your dopamine-seeking circuits are going to scream at you. You are going to feel like you are missing out. You are going to feel like you are falling behind. You are going to feel like everyone else is learning and growing, and you are stuck doing the same boring thing every day. Good. That discomfort is not a sign that something is wrong. That discomfort is the feeling of neuroplasticity. That is your brain rewiring itself. That is the sensation of growth. Real growth, not the fake growth you get from watching another video. Actual structural change in your neural architecture. And it feels like boredom and frustration and resistance because those are the sensations your ancient brain uses to try to get you to seek novelty again. Do not listen to it. The only way out is through. Third, you need to understand that transformation is not an event. It is a process, and the process is metabolically expensive. Your brain resists change because change requires energy, and your brain is optimized to conserve energy. This is why motivation fades. Motivation is an emotional state, and emotional states are temporary. What you need is not motivation. What you need is identity shift. You need to stop seeing yourself as someone who is trying to become disciplined and start seeing yourself as someone who is disciplined, not because you feel like it, but because that is who you are. And the way you build identity is not through belief. It is through evidence. Every time you do the thing you said you would do, even when you do not want to, you are generating evidence for your brain that this is who you are. Every time you follow through, you are strengthening the neural pathway that says, I am the kind of person who does what I say I will do. Your brain does not believe what you tell it. Your brain believes what you show it through repeated action. So, here is the protocol. For the next 30 days, you will implement one strategy. You will not consume any new self-improvement content. You will not watch videos. You will not read books. You will not listen to podcasts. You will not scroll through motivational quotes. You will take the one thing you already know, and you will do it every single day, without exception. And when your brain tells you that you are missing out, when it tells you that there is better information out there, when it tells you that you need to keep learning, you will recognize that voice as your dopamine-seeking circuit trying to pull you back into the loop. And you will ignore it, not because you are strong, but because you have engineered an environment where ignoring it is easier than listening to it. And here is what will happen. In the first week, you will feel anxious. You will feel like you are doing it wrong. You will feel like everyone else has moved on and you are stuck in the past. This is normal. This is your brain throwing a tantrum because you cut off its dopamine supply. In the second week, the anxiety will turn into boredom. You will feel like nothing is happening. You will feel like the strategy is not working. You will be tempted to quit and find something new. Do not quit. This is the phase where the real work is happening. Your brain is building new pathways, but those pathways are not visible yet. They are happening at the cellular level. Neurons are forming new connections. Myelin is wrapping around those connections to make them faster and stronger, but you cannot feel it. You just have to trust the process. In the third week, something will shift. The thing you have been doing every day will start to feel slightly easier, not because you are more motivated, but because the neural pathway is getting stronger. The resistance is decreasing. In the fourth week, you will notice that you are doing the thing without thinking about it. It has started to become automatic. This is when you know the rewiring is working. This is when you know you are actually changing. And then you do it again. You pick one more thing, and you spend another 30 days building that pathway, and then another, and another, not because you are collecting strategies, but because you are building an identity. You are becoming someone who finishes what they start, someone who does what they say they will do, someone who transforms information into action instead of hoarding information as a substitute for action. This is not sexy. This is not inspiring. This is not going to give you a dopamine hit. This is just how real change works. Slow, boring, metabolically expensive, invisible until it is not. Now, let me tell you what this has to do with the title of this video. This might be the last video you ever need to watch. Not because I have some secret that no one else knows. Not because this information is somehow superior to everything else you have consumed, but because if you actually implement what I just told you, you will break the cycle. You will stop needing videos like this. You will stop seeking external validation for your internal transformation. You will stop using content consumption as a drug to numb the discomfort of staying the same. You will become the kind of person who does the work instead of watching other people talk about doing the work. But here is the catch. Most of you will not do this. Most of you will watch this video, feel inspired, maybe even leave a comment about how powerful this message is, and then you will go watch another video because the pattern is too strong, because the dopamine loop is too deeply wired, because changing your behavior is harder than changing your playlist. And that is fine. I am not here to judge you. I am here to show you the game you are playing, so that if you ever decide to stop playing it, you know exactly what you are up against. You are not fighting lack of information. You are fighting 200,000 years of evolutionary programming. You are fighting a dopamine delivery system that was designed to keep you alive in the savannah and now keeps you trapped in an infinite scroll. You are fighting the most sophisticated behavioral manipulation technology that has ever existed, and it is running on your phone and your laptop and your tablet every single second of every single day. So if you want to break free, you have to become more intentional than the algorithm. You have to engineer your environment with the same precision that the platforms engineer their interfaces. You have to understand your own neurobiology better than the people who are trying to exploit it. And you have to accept that the feeling of transformation is not the same as actual transformation. That inspiration is not action. That motivation is not discipline. That knowing is not doing. And once you accept that, once you really internalize that, you can start to build a life based on evidence instead of emotion, based on behavior instead of belief, based on neural rewiring instead of neural hijacking. Let me give you one more piece of the puzzle. The reason content consumption feels so good is because your brain treats information as a resource. In the ancient world, the tribe member who knew where the berries were, who understood the weather patterns, who could read the tracks of predators, that person had survival value. Knowledge was power, but knowledge was also scarce. So your brain evolved to reward you heavily for acquiring it. Every new piece of information was a potential advantage. Every skill you learned increased your odds of survival and reproduction. Your dopamine system reflects this. It gives you a reward for learning because learning used to be directly connected to action. You learned where the berries were, and then you walked there and ate them. You learned how to make fire, and then you made fire and stayed warm. The information immediately converted into survival advantage. But now we live in a world where you can learn how to do anything without ever doing it. You can watch a video on how to build a business without building a business. You can read a book on discipline without becoming disciplined. You can listen to a podcast about confidence without ever feeling confident. The information is decoupled from the action, and your brain has not caught up. It still rewards you for learning, as if learning automatically leads to doing. So you get the dopamine hit of acquisition without the metabolic cost of implementation, and your brain loves this deal. It is getting the reward without the work. This is why you can spend 10 years consuming self-improvement content and still be exactly where you started. Because your brain thinks you have already improved. It thinks the information itself is the advantage. It does not understand that in the modern world, information without implementation is just noise. So the hack is simple. You have to reconnect information and action in your brain. You have to train your nervous system to only reward you for doing, not for learning about doing. And the way you do this is by creating a rule. Every time you consume a piece of content, you have to implement at least one thing from it within 24 hours. Not plan to implement, not add it to a list. Actually do it. If you watch a video about morning routines, you wake up the next day and do the routine. If you read a chapter about cold exposure, you take a cold shower that same day. If you listen to a podcast about saying no, you say no to something within the next 24 hours. You are building an association in your brain between information input and behavioral output. You are training your dopamine system to only fire when you act, not when you learn. And this is going to feel impossible at first, because you are used to consuming content in bulk. You are used to binging videos and articles and books. But bulk consumption is exactly what keeps you trapped. Every piece of content you consume without implementing is another open loop, another source of cognitive debt, another promise you made to yourself that you did not keep. So you have to go on an information diet. You have to consume so little content that you have no choice but to implement what you learn, because there is nothing else in the queue. One video per week, one book per month, one strategy at a time. This is not about limiting your growth. This is about maximizing your growth by ensuring that every piece of information you take in actually changes your behavior instead of just taking up space in your head. I know this sounds extreme. I know it sounds like I am asking you to deprive yourself, but you are already deprived. You are deprived of the life you could be living if you spent your time building instead of learning about building. You are deprived of the person you could become if you stopped consuming transformation and started creating it. You are deprived of the satisfaction that comes from finishing what you start, from doing what you say you will do, from proving to yourself through action that you are capable of change. No video can give you that. No book can give you that. No podcast can give you that. The only thing that can give you that is you, doing the work every single day, even when you do not feel like it, especially when you do not feel like it. So here's the real question. Are you going to keep playing the game, or are you going to walk away from the table? Are you going to keep seeking, or are you going to start building? Are you going to watch another video after this one, or are you going to close the app and do one thing, just one thing, that moves your life forward? Because that is the test. That is the moment where you find out if you are serious or if you are just addicted to the feeling of being serious. And there is no judgment either way. Most people are not ready. Most people will choose the dopamine loop over the hard work of rewiring. Most people will stay exactly where they are because staying where you are is metabolically cheaper than changing. But you are not most people. If you were, you would have stopped watching 10 minutes ago. You are still here because some part of you knows that this is the truth. Some part of you is tired of the cycle. Some part of you is ready to stop consuming and start creating. If you made it this far, I already know something important about you. You do not just want to survive your own mind, you want to master it. This channel is not about magic promises. It is about real people sharing real tools that work in the real world. If this makes sense to you, subscribe to the channel, not because I am asking, but because you deserve a place where you can learn to build the version of yourself you always knew was in there. Biology is destiny until you hack it. One final thing before we end. Everything in this video is for educational and entertainment purposes. This content is a philosophical framework, not medical or psychological advice. If you are struggling with serious mental health issues, please seek professional help from a licensed therapist or counselor. The concepts discussed here are based on research in neuroscience and evolutionary biology, but they are presented in a dramatized format for engagement. Your brain is more complex than any video can capture. Your life is more nuanced than any protocol can address. Use this information as a starting point for your own exploration, not as a replacement for professional guidance. And remember that change is possible, but it requires more than watching videos about change. It requires doing the uncomfortable work of rewiring your biological machinery one decision at a time. Now stop watching and start